The poem we are reading today is part 2 of 3 parts in the Gerard Manley Hopkins series. Last time we did the poem Pied Beauty, and today we're reading the poem Thou art indeed just, Lord, if I contend. Thou art indeed just, Lord, if I contend with thee. But, sir, so what I plead is just. Pray, request, why do sinners' ways prosper? And why must disappointment all I endeavour end? Wert thou my enemy, O thou my friend, how wouldst thou worse, I wonder, than thou dost defeat, thwart me? Oh, the sots and thralls of lust do in spare hours more thrive than I that spend, sir, life upon thy cause. See, banks and brakes now, leavèd, how thick laced they are again with fretty chervil. Look, and fresh wind shakes them. Birds build, but not I build, no, but strain time's eunuch, and not breed one work that wakes. Mine, O thou Lord of life, send my roots rain. And the last 2 lines, and not breed one work that wakes. Mine, O thou Lord of life, send my roots rain. This poem follows in the publication and the timing of when it was written after the so-called 5 or 6 terrible sonnets that Hopkins wrote that stand in complete opposition, as it were, to the joy and freshness of Pied Beauty, when everything was beautiful and everything was joy, celebration of God's works, and then the crash comes in these years later when the life force, the sap, has been drained of Hopkins, and we get these terrible poems of what are called depression, of sadness, terribly depressing. It's terrible to say that they're beautiful poems because it's like speaking about poetry after the Holocaust, nonetheless. And then comes this poem. How shall we look at this poem? It's a poem in which the person is not really referring to God as something he calls God, the poet calls God his friend. He calls God his just, right? He calls God sir. But he has another problem. And this problem is clearly about the problem. What the title of this poem is a verse from Yirmiyahu, from Jeremiah, at the beginning of chapter 12, the very first verse, in which Yirmiyahu says, "You are righteous, O Hashem, though I may express a grievance to you, but I will speak with you of judgments." It begins with the fact that God is righteous, but there is a question that is being raised, a grievance that's being raised. And what is that grievance? So there are 2 aspects to the question of theodicy. Theodicy is the great question of religion, and that is, how can we speak of a just God if the righteous suffer, if the righteous do not find justice in the world. But there is a sharper question of theodicy. It is not just that the righteous suffer, but the wicked prosper. And that means the knife cuts more sharply and is plunged more deeply into religious faith. And this is what the poet is saying, that I suffer is one thing, but on the other hand, the sots and thralls of lust do in spare hours more thrive than I that spend, sir, life upon thy cause. It is what in Hebrew we call tzaddik viralo. The righteous finds evil and difficulty and travail in his life, virasha, and the wicked vitovlo, and it seems to be very good to him. And the issue finds its expression in our regular prayer. In fact, it finds its expression in the very prayer, the very psalm, Psalm 92, Tehillim Tzadi Beit, with which we welcome in Shabbos. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos, a psalm for the Sabbath day. It is good to thank Hashem and to sing praise to your name, O Exalted One. Tov lahodot l'Hashem u'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid baboker chastecha, to relate your kindness in the dawn and your faith in the night. V'yamunatcha baleilot. And then we have a problem, because the psalm, although beautiful, doesn't talk about Shabbat. Doesn't say anything about Shabbat. Shabbat is not mentioned other than in the opening verse. And in fact, the song goes on, Ma'arabu ma'asecha Hashem, how great are your deeds, Hashem, mi'odamku machshvosecha, exceedingly profound are your thoughts. And then it goes on to talking, Ishbar lo yedu silo yovin etzot, a foolish person, a boor can't understand this. And it talks about when the wicked bloom, bifroach rishoim kamo esev, like grass, and all the doers of iniquity blossom, and then it is to destroy them for all eternity. But befroach rishoim kamo esev, we're beginning to talk about the problem of theodicy. This issue is addressed by Rav Hutner in Pachad Yitzchak, in his seminal work, Pachad Yitzchak, a volume dealing with Shabbat, and it is the second entry. And Rav Hutner explains beautifully that when we look at the creation of the world, every day, Tuesday is an exception, but that is understood. It is repeated twice on rather the other way around. It's repeated twice on Tuesday. The leitmotif, the refrain of creation is Vayar Elokim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that which he has made, right? And it's Tov. Vayar Elokim ki Tov. He sees that it's good. This day is good. That day is good. All the days of creation are good. At the end of creation, there is a difference. Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa. Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa. God saw all that he did. V'hinei tov me'od. It is very good. And Rav Hutner explains the following, that every day of creation, I'll use my own words, is a creation of a gizmo, a widget, or whatchamacallit, different aspects of reality. But the question is, How will this totality fit together? Will it work? Every individual unit could be perfect, but it doesn't produce anything in the synthesis of it all when the all comes into fruition. So when creation is done, Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa, v'hinei tov mo. The coldness, the totality works, and it becomes not just good, but very good. And then, right, then Shabbos comes. Shabbos comes. Shabbos is a celebration of Tov Ma'od. So the problem of this Tov Ma'od is being addressed in the Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos. Bifroach Rishoyim K'mo Esav, Yishbar Lo Yeda, Chsil Lo Yomin Ezos. The fools don't understand it. There is, in the apparent lack of goodness in the world, in the lack of functioning of the good, in the flowering of the wicked, there seems to be a flaw, but it is not. And that is what the rest of the Mizmor, the rest of the Psalm addresses. Lishomda Madayad. And there comes a day, there will come a day in the history of the world, in the history of any individual, in Olam Hazeh, and Yemot HaMashiach, and in Olam Haba, in the world of the Spirit, when Tzadi Katamar Yifrach, when this wonderful, as the poet puts it, this wonderful blend of nature, as he puts it in Pi Beauty, and he alludes to at the end of this poem we have read, right? When he's ruining the growth of beauty, laced as they are again with fretty chervil, and fresh wind shakes them, birds build, and I think you can see over my shoulder the fresh wind shaking the trees, beautiful trees outside my window, but not I build right now, not breed one work that wakes. So God, mine, O thou Lord of life, send my roots rain, mashiv haruach, umorid hageshem, chesed, send me loving kindness, let me experience it. Beauty is out there, let it come to me. Let me not despair. And when there is no prayer left to a person is mired in despair. But the poet Hopkins at the end prays, mine, O thou Lord of life, Ribono Shalom, send my roots rain. What appears to be thwarting this whole issue is taken up by Rabbi Nachman in what I dare say is the famous Torah in the second volume of Likutei Moharan, entry 48, well known because it has the counsel against despair. Kol olam kulo gesher tsar miod. The whole world is a narrow bridge, and there's fright. There can be fright, but the haklal v'ha'ikar, to get across this narrow bridge, the essence, the great rule of life is shelo yitpachad, that a man must not make himself afraid, because fear is what we give to ourselves. It's the reflexive verb in Hebrew. It's shelo yityaesh, that let me not make myself despair. Let me not give up hope, no matter what seems to be. At that moment, when I am almost across the bridge, Rabbi Nachman has said earlier in this very Torah, then the forces of despair, the forces of giving up, rise up against me. It's kind of like a goal line stand of the Sitra Achra of Satan, or that which is the Satan in man, which is the possibility of man despairing. And Rabbi Nachman says a person should know that he is close, very close, to the Sharei Kedusha, to the gates of holiness, when he feels the forces of despair welling up, but don't give into it, right? Reminds me of the Simon song, the nearer your destination, the more you slip sliding away. The closer you get to the destination, do you begin to backslide. It's like you're reaching the peak, and it seems the most difficult thing is to stretch your hand and take one more step to stand on the peak. And that's when it's the hardest. So this poem, in the end, is asking the question that is fair to ask. People ask it. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be dismissed with the wave of the hand by any teacher. On the other hand, how often do we see in life people who, if they had just persevered, and we might know it about ourselves, when we did in our lives persevere despite the difficulties and despite what seemed to be the odds, and how we were able to accomplish what we accomplished. And this is what Hopkins is praying for. And this is what Yirmiyahu prays for. And this is what anybody on the quest of success, and surely the success in the religious life, in finding meaning and goodness in a world in which all too often it seems like the sots are the one who are sated, rather than the tzaddikim, rather than the righteous. Lo lihityaesh, lo lihitpached. That's what makes Shabbos Shabbos. And Shabbos is the time in which we come to that resolution that we do understand, we do appreciate, despite all the difficulties, the wonder of the working of the world, the wonder that is celebrated in Shabbos. Vayar Elokim et kol asher asa v'hinei tov ma'od, and the pasuk continues, Vayhi erev vayivoker Yom Hashishi, Vayachulu Hashamayim ve'aretz v'chol tzva'am, and we celebrate, we say Kiddush, we sanctify the day, and through that sanctify the life. And that's why Jews don't want to let Shabbos go away. That's why Jews know that there is a reality called a Jew of Shabbos. And the Jew of Shabbos says every day a psalm, and the psalm is counted by the days of Shabbos, by the infusion of the Shabbos past and the future prospect of the Shabbos to come.